This is about one of those top secret projects I got involved with that seemed like it was going in the right direction and then it stopped. In the late 90s, I was working at Planet Medley, and the new sound national sales manager for Eventide stopped by, Jerry Griffin. And me and him hit it off. We became pretty good friends. And we would just, I would sell Eventide, and things were, just a business relationship. And the one thing I asked him about, if Eventide would consider making plugins for Pro Tools, because Pro Tools at that point was just starting to explode. I was selling like 10 systems, you know, every so often. I mean, they were going out to WMMR, the big radio stations, the big studios. I mean, everybody was buying the Pro Tools system. And he talked to Eventide, and they weren't keen on taking their algorithms and making it work on a Pro Tools as a plugin. So they wanted you to buy the external box and not buy a plugin, because they thought they would lose hardware sales by doing that. So I was at the AES show that year, and Summit Audio had a EQ that they just came out with that had MIDI ports on the back of it, and they had a plugin that worked inside of Pro Tools. So how that worked is you called up the plugin. The plugin, all it did was communicate through MIDI to the EQ. So you still had to route the audio inputs and outputs of the EQ through your Pro Tools hardware, but your plugin would recall and dynamically control, for automation and that, the hardware. And I saw that, and I immediately said, oh, I need to go talk to my friend Jerry. So I brought him by the booth. I went and grabbed him by the Eventide booth, brought him over to Summit, and I said, look at this. And he's looking at it, and he says, yeah. I said, do you see what could be done? He says, I don't know. And I said, what if Eventide had a plugin that controlled your hardware? And he said, well, that would be fantastic. I said, then, maybe you could give it away with the hardware when it's sold, so you're adding value to it. And he said, well, that would be a crazy thing to do, but I think that would be good. So I said, well, let me see what I can do. So I talked to my friend, I forgot who it was Fred or Ted Hermanson, and they're friends of mine. They're twins, but I get them mixed up. But they live in the Lancaster area, and they're just geniuses with programming. And I ran the idea by them, and we had meetings with Eventide. And to make a long story short, we created the plugin. So you would go into Pro Tools, call the plugin up. It would show the screen of an Eventide, I think it was the Orville at the time. And anything that you did on the hardware would reflect on the plugin, and anything you did on the plugin would reflect on the hardware. So it would interrogate each other, and it worked perfectly. So we put it together. They ended up paying, I think it was Fred, his fee to do the plugin. They ended up giving me, I think it was 2 Orvilles as in lieu of payment. But the thing is, they never did anything with the plugin. They were too afraid of doing something like that because they thought DigiDesign or Avid, I don't know who it was at the time, was going to not kind of frowned on the idea. So they never brought it to market. And I thought it would have been a great product to bring to market, especially if they gave it away with all the hardware, and people could call up their reverbs from the Eventide unit. But that was my secret project I was involved with. Wasn't allowed to talk about it, but it's 20 some years later, so it doesn't matter anymore. But the ironic thing is now Eventide makes all of their algorithms and plugins and reverbs from all their hardware boxes work as plugins. I think it's all of them, but everybody's kind of changed their tune. But back then, it was kind of strict.